Anyway, off my soapbox now. This is something which it really, really radicalized me when I read this the other day. It radicalized me more and more and more. So this happened in London recently, and a 9-year-old girl was shot in a gangland dispute, which was an attempted assassination of rival gang members in Dalston in East London. And when I saw this, I quoted it and I said, my belief that remigration in many instances is going to be an undue kindness for a lot of people just expanded massively. Because this should never, ever be happening. So what happened was there was a shooting by a gunman riding a motorbike, and this was a rivalry between the Tottenham Turks and the Hackney Turks. Why we have gangs that are literally known as Tottenham Turks and Hackney Turks? Well, I do have an idea, because they were brought over by successive governments that wanted mass migration. Very likely. It's very likely that these don't go back, more than 50 years, I would say. I could be wrong. But I can't imagine these being around in like the time of the craze, for example. What happened was, in the Crossfire, I believe it was, a 9-year-old girl was shot in the head by a motorbike riding gunman in East London in an attempted assassination of rival gang members, court has heard. So I don't believe they've named the gunman, but they did name some of the people who were targeted, I believe. These people, Ali Nasser, 43, either Keenan or Kenan Adogdu, however you say it, and then Mustafa Kitsiltam, 38. So you have 43, 45, and 38. Again, these lovely, eloquent British names, right? Who were linked to the Hackney Turks, were sat outside a busy Evan restaurant on Kingsland High Street, Hackney, when 6 shots were fired at the group in 2 seconds. The first bullet missed and hit the girl, who was sitting at an inside table with her family on the evening of 29th of May last year, and lodged in her brain. So the imported gang violence that successive governments have brought over damn near killed. And I saw some people saying that this actually killed her. They don't believe the 9-year-old girl had died. Later on in the article, it says she survived. I think she went on. She didn't go on to make a full recovery, I don't believe. She said this incident probably is going to affect her for the rest of her life. All the victims survived. The girl needed operations to rebuild her skull with titanium and was in hospital for 3 months before being allowed to go home. She will have physical and cognitive difficulties for the rest of her life. So this 9-year-old girl is going to grow up with these physical and cognitive difficulties all the rest of her life from something that was completely preventable. That's completely preventable by not having drastic open border policy in the first place, and not having our noses needing to be rubbed in diversity. Now, could this have happened anyway? Yeah, sure. Would it have been less likely that it would have happened? I think you make a compelling case. Because say you want about, a lot of criminals and stuff like that. A lot of them, their fathers, they have wives and stuff like that, like the mob in New York, for example. A lot of them, they had, they were obviously sons. A lot of them brought their sons into the life, right? But, and again, not saying that these people meant to go after this girl, obviously. But Sammy the Bull Gravano, as I used to talk about a lot of the podcasts, he mentioned that there was a hit that he was going to put out on somebody. And they set up for it. I can't remember the guy's name. I believe later on he was hit by a different group, I believe it was. But they were going to do this hit, and they prepared for it. They were ready to go hit. But because he was walking with his family, because he had his young children with him, I believe he was walking down the street with, I believe he had his wife and daughter, I believe it was. They decided not to do the hit. They was like, no, not here. not here. We won't do it here. They knew what they had to do, obviously, because if they didn't do it, they would get killed. And it's not justifying this anything whatsoever. Or this whole entire enterprise is disgusting, right? But there's that, again, element of understanding there. Being like, the kids have nothing to do with this. It's like if a guy was in the mafia and he got hit, typically then the wife and the family would be taken care of, financially and stuff like that. There's that weird kind of honor there that a lot of these same people coming from these places don't have. We've seen how their culture treats children. We've seen how children are treated in a lot of these countries where Islam is the predominant religion, for example. It's completely different. It's completely different. And we should have no part of this. This doesn't belong on our streets. Prosecutors say the shooting was part of an ongoing dispute between the Tottenham Turks and Hackney Turks, also known as the Bombakilars or Bombasilars. Sorry, there's a phone call coming through, ladies and gentlemen. I'll have to pick up that later. Known as the Bombers, whose intense rivalry over more than a decade has seen extreme violence used between them. Oh, here we go. So they did name the driver, sorry. Somebody by the name of Javon Riley of Farnborough, Hampshire, is on trial at the Old Bailey, where he denies 4 charges of attempted murder, an alternative charge of causing grievous bodily harm with intent relating to the girl cannot be identified because of her age. Prosecutors say Riley wasn't a member of the Tottenham Turks, but was linked to them and knew they were behind the shooting. The gunman who arrived on the scene on an extremely powerful red caddy monster has not been arrested, but Riley is said to have played a key role before, during, and after the alleged attempted murders. He is alleged to have been an integral part of the plan as he carried out reconnaissance and carried the gunman away from the scene. So seemingly, at least, he's an accomplice. He's not a direct part of this. He's an accomplice. But I don't think yet they've found the shooter. There is another person named here, a man called Kem. Prosecutors say is Kemal Eren, one of those closely involved in the Tottenham Turks. Then they said, this is from Mr. Mulhound, who I believe, is he the prosecutor? I believe he's the prosecutor. James Mulhound said, it is clear from all evidence that Javon Riley knew this was a job for individuals connected with the Tottenham Turks, the level of violence required, and the aim was to kill those seated outside the restaurant, and played an integral part in setting the scene so that this came about. So yeah, this is now what we have to contend with on the streets of Britain. Gang disputes, foreign gang disputes that we never asked for, mind you. Reminds me of a bunch of, I believe it was 2 Turkish barbers, I believe it was, in a town very, very close to me a couple of months ago. I believe it was in February. The videos came out of them having this massive brawl in the middle of the street. They had crowbars, they had the lot. This is what our governments have done. They've put your children in direct danger, put your children in direct line of fire by importing who they know in many instances to be radicalized people who don't have any regard for our lives and anything like that. Not good, morally upright, virtuous, hardworking people. They've done it for the same reason you heard Yvette, what was her name? Yvette Clark say just now, for redistricting purposes. They brought them in for their vote. So not only have they put you in danger, they've done it so that they can secure their fat paychecks and secure their job the next time around, because they know that they've done an absolutely atrocious job and betrayed the British people at every single turn. And they knew that if this was a society a couple of 100 years ago, they'd be swinging from the end of a rope. That's the kind of political system that we have. A lot of people floating the question at the moment where, oh shit, I accidentally closed on my tab. Sorry, guys. That I wanted to read. Makes you wonder, we spoke about this a lot with James S's, not James S's, James Monroe, for example, where he said one of the most dangerous things at the moment is this notion that there's no political solution. I find myself coming back to that question. Scary, but I find myself coming back to that question a lot the more and more I see.